Okay. So, is this microphone on? I guess I should talk because there's no way they could tell if it was on. I'm not talking. Yeah? We're good? No. No, we're not good. Okay. Hi. Hi, John. It sounds like it's on
Yeah,
now.
now it sounds
Yeah.
like it's on.
Okay, great. So we're going to get started. I'm sorry for the delay. I wasn't paying attention, and so here we are. So thank you for joining us. My name is Wayne Itoga, and my bio is on page 28 of your program book. You know, some things I heard during the speed dating thing last night. That's not what it was called. Speed friending thing last night. You know, the importance of being seen and heard, coming out to yourself, the intersection of identity, reticence, perhaps we could use the word silence, particularly in the context of our community, reticence to talk about our shit, as Eric likes to say, things that lead to isolation, invisibility, denial, shame. That's the elephant in any Nikkei space. The issue of safe spaces, collective historical trauma, disinvited to the community, being comfortable with other JAs in a JA space, not having to explain yourselves, being in the last part of our lives. So I really want us to try and amplify those ideas and themes. They provide a lot of context to our conversation today, even in this short time that we have together. To our friends that have chosen to join us this afternoon, I hope you'll help us to talk about what's important to you. Gary Hayashi, he, him, his, a gay woman. Lori Song, she, her, hers, trans woman. Valerie Kamea, she, her, queer parent. Our bios are all on page 29, so I just want us to get right into talking whatever we're going to talk about. So, you know, I've heard that when a child steps out of the closet, often the parents step in. So my coming out story was really unremarkable and was received in my father's totally blank affect, without any sort of drama or discussion. Like, oh, that's interesting. Well, I always had an idea that, you know, you were different. Or, you know, it's probably my fault. But, you know, so, I mean, it was over in about 20 minutes. So I appreciate that that's not everybody's situation. So to the extent that your coming out has to do with who you are today, Valerie, your coming out process went well, or?
Some of you know my parents, so
Who are they? Who are your
Harold
parents?
and Ellen Kamea, who might be here. They meant to be here, but I think they're slow about walking over, which is fine. I came out, I thought I might be a lesbian when I was in high school, but then I kind of quashed it, and first year of college I quashed it, and then I started thinking more about it, and writing anguish journal entries on the family PC, because we all shared a PC because computers were very expensive and they were in the family room. So my dad happened to look at a directory, my file folder, when I was not there because I stupidly didn't pass. I don't even know if you could password protect it at that time. So, and then I kind of stupidly subscribed to the lesbian news and had it delivered to my parents' house. But it was in an envelope, and I didn't think my dad would open it, but he had a backlog of mail, so he was just like going through and opening a bunch of envelopes. So he didn't mean to like open my mail, but then he was like, "What's this lesbian news?" So yeah, my parents had a hard time with it, and they were kind of quiet and silent about it. And then, you know, we eventually talked, and you know, after a couple of years, they joined PFLAG and cried, and then now they're like very supportive. But yeah, is that what you want to hear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Absolutely.
thanks.
That's great. Lori, your coming out story?
I came out late in life, and I started out by getting on Facebook. And I included some pictures, old pictures of me all dressed and made up, as kind of an intro, because I knew a lot of my friends and family were on Facebook. And I was hoping that that would be like an icebreaker, or at least a warning shot. across their bow that some big and surprising news might be coming their way. So my coming out process was very, nothing planned. I went all by feel. One of the first people I came out to was one of my lifelong buddies. We're like brothers. And we were having hamburgers and fries at our favorite place, and the moment just felt right. So I said, "Hey, Tommy, I got something to tell you, man." And so he was like, "Oh, what?" So I told him, yeah, and the timing was really good because Bruce Jenner had just become Caitlyn to the whole world. So they gave him a basis to kind of understand what I was talking about. And he was like shell-shocked, stunned. He was like, okay. But that's how I did it. If the moment felt right, in other words, there's many ways that you can come out. You can write a letter, or you can prepare a speech, or you can get found out and outed in various ways. But my method was just by feel and in the moment kind of thing.
It's terrific.
Yeah, so, yeah. I tried to not put pressure on myself that way, because I kind of felt if I planned it out versus being spontaneous, I don't think it would have been even harder. That's why, please excuse me, I'm doing this very spontaneously too.
That's good. Yeah,
So,
Valerie.
at times it might be like, what? But I'm putting my trust in all my friends here in Wayne to help me through it. So,
Well, that was
Thank
a
you.
mistake, but no, thank you, Lori.
Should we
Valerie?
give a year to timestamp our coming out thing? So I came out in like 1987. So I don't know when you posted on Facebook. I don't think I was your
yeah, that
Facebook
was,
friend at that time.
see, that's why I'm on this dinosaur panel. I can't remember. It was, gosh, maybe 2015 or something like that. I was still working, and so I was a little nervous at a coworker, because especially the younger ones, they're tech savvy, and I just decided if they find out, they find out. And if they do find out, well, it's on them to react in however way they will, and then I'll have to respond. And I was okay with it, because I felt like this is what it's going to be about, challenge and being challenged maybe, and meeting the challenge and learning, because I knew I was starting this process that was just, I didn't know how it was going to go.
Yeah. I think for me, 83, 84, something like that. Gary, your coming out story?
It's still happening.
Mine too.
I think about coming out very differently now than I did back when I was struggling with it. I came out in my mid-40s after spending 7 years in an ex-gay ministry. And then it wasn't like this one big announcement to the whole world sort of thing. It was gradual, it was slow, it was to various people. But I think, as I think back about it now, the question I was always asking myself is not how will other people take it, but how comfortable am I being more myself in any particular context? And it was always about my comfort level with me as opposed to other people's comfort level with me. Otherwise, I probably would have never come out, right? Because I'm Japanese American. What do you want, right? What are we raised to be, right? More concerned about how we're perceived, right? And I knew that if I didn't do it as an internal process, that it would take longer, and I would, you know, probably imagine a lot of things, like certain people would be rejecting when they weren't. And so it made it easier to give people a chance. Like, I'm going to show up a little more as me, and if you don't run away screaming, I guess we can continue to be friends until you do, right? And that has always sort of been, I mean, even to this day, the way I think about my own evolution, my own growth path.
Thank you. You know, I'd like to talk a little bit about formative impacts. Someone at my table last night said that, you know, he came out to himself first, and I think I describe this process as a little differently because I'm older. You know, I had to admit to myself that I was gay, and I think that's a little more harsh. I think that reflects the time at which I came out. It was like, the way he put it was, you know, I think coming out is perhaps a little more contemporaneous. It's more now, right? It's more like you're coming out of your shell as opposed to coming out of the closet, which is where the saying came from. So I think just the term queer, right? It's been embraced. A lot of us use it. And that's kind of shocking when you think about it, because queer was a bad word. It was the ultimate insult. But it was reclaimed, and I think, you know, we have our friends in ACT UP, the gay pioneers, if you will, the activist pioneers, many of who are dead of AIDS. So my formative years were pretty lonely. They were pretty dark. You couldn't just Google information about being gay and, you know, feel at least some sort of community out there like that. You couldn't readily watch porn on your computer. You know, the porn you could watch that you rented, you know, they were all pretty much like white guys with huge dicks. You know, everything was, you know, you were strictly a bottom or a top. You know, there was absolutely no male Asian sex symbol out there in the movies. There was a lack of community. There was like a hierarchy of exclusion from predominantly white gay institutions: beauty, race, wealth, age. You know, it kind of fell out along those things. So I carry a tremendous amount of baggage, and this is the run-up and the aftermath to my coming out story. That has a lot more to do with who I am today than me coming out. So, you know, talk about your formative experiences, the things that shaped you and make you who you are today. Lori?
Formative experiences? Yeah. Well, you're talking about before coming out and just growing up?
Anything. You know, what makes you who you are today? You know, what?
Well, as a kid growing up, LGBT things just weren't talked about. The language wasn't there, the community wasn't there. And of course, we've been around everywhere forever, but we've always been like super separated because there was really no easy way or recognized way to, like, I couldn't just go up to Valerie and say, "Hey Val, how do you identify? You know, what's your orientation?" Just, you know, couldn't do that. And so I wore a suit of armor for a long time, and I hid behind it. I had my shield and my sword. So I became a ball player, athlete, wannabe tough guy, dabbled in drugs, alcohol, all that, you know, I was trying to escape myself and build up this persona that to this day some people still think of me that way. And so it's making it harder for them to accept me. And I understand it. I get it. I think I have to be persistent, not in convincing them, but I have to be persistent in how my approach for me is. And if I'm on this trip and they don't want to come along for whatever reason, then I'm going to keep going because I have to. Yeah. So that in terms of the way, the forces that shaped me, yeah, it was societal, family, the code of the old neighborhood. For the boys, you were either a nerd, Poindexter, smart kid, or which I was not. I wasn't smart. I was a closeted nerd. Or you were the tough guy. And for girls, you just had to be goody two-shoes and, you know, do well in school and be popular and all that. And so it was very rigid. So I for survival's sake and to fit in and not be on the outside, to be accepted, I had to try to conform, you know, be a tough kid, play sports, you know, try to get all the girlfriends you could, and, you know, just get a reputation. That was big. But it's all just childish stuff. You know, kids hide behind all kind of things. So finally, as my life went on, I tried being family guy and, you know, breadwinner, and picket fence, and, you know, son and daughter. But it took me a long time to realize that that's not who I am. It's not who I want to be, although I could see the benefits of that. But I was like, no, I'm not going to live in suburbia. I'm not going to do that trip. So, yeah, if that answers the question.
It does. No, absolutely.
Okay.
Gary, how about you? Formative experiences?
I think now as I look back on it, my biggest struggle was trying to exist peacefully with all the parts of myself that I knew were there in a world that insisted on the binary. That there were boys and there were girls, that there was masculine and there was feminine. There was no crossover, there was no carryover, there was no in between. You couldn't have both. You had to be one or the other. And I have an older brother who's 19 months older than me. And he was sort of like the embodiment of testosterone. And so when I come along and like he's into trucks and balls and guns and cowboys, and I come along and I'm into Disney princesses, and you're like, ooh, one of these things is not like the other. And it was just a struggle. Like, I was so different than him. And I knew just intuitively that he embodied the values that the culture held. Because when he gravitated towards things that were interesting to him or exciting to him, he was encouraged and got approval. When I gravitated towards things that I was fascinated about or interested in, I got humiliation, criticism, rebuke, because a lot of the things that drew me were pretty, like pretty colors and fairy tales and all of those kinds of things. And so it was hard to live in that place. Because the culture said that that was not the way boys typically presented. And I think that dealing with those different elements, more the masculine, feminine, binary, and coming to a point of integration and embracing. Some of my friends, they were very funny to me, because I can and have done both drag, dressed, completely as a woman, and I've done leather drag, right? Just gone the hyper-masculine way and the hyper-feminine way. And they marvel at the fact that I can just bounce back and forth between the two, and they don't know, like, how do you do that? But it's like, I don't know, how do I just do that, right? Because internally, I have an interesting and, I don't know, maybe unique combination of the masculine and the feminine that I've come to peace with. And it doesn't really matter to me now what the context says in terms of what's appropriate or not appropriate. Or it's been a long struggle to come to that I don't have to live in the binary, that I can live right in the middle in an integrated way and let the pieces sort of fall where they may. But that was the hardest for me. And I think my long sojourn in the evangelical church in particular was a way of trying to live in a structure that had definitive rules about what was acceptable and what was not. And so if I could succeed in that particular context, right, then I could hit the target and find approval and live life as sort of an acceptable person. And it wasn't until that association came to its inevitable and that I recognized I can't be myself in this context. I can't be all of me in this context. And so I need to move out of it. I think I even had ambivalence about the Japanese American community and feeling like I can't be all of me in this community. And so I had to leave the community in order to come out and then circle back to it. So I'm grateful for Okaide in particular for giving me a vehicle to circle back to the JA community that says, no, we want all of you. We want your whole story. We want everything that you have to bring in. You know, there's a special crown in heaven for Marsha Izumi and the work that she does. There really, really is, because she just embodied to me the essence of the Christian message that said everybody is welcome here and all of you is welcome. And that's been, I think, the biggest struggle I've had through my formative years.
Valerie, formative experiences?
Let's see. I just realized my parents are probably watching this in the forum, so it's like I'm not clear. But anyway, so yeah, I grew up, I was born in 1967, so I grew up in the 70s in the San Fernando Valley, and it was pretty homophobic. Like the worst thing you could, a fifth grade boy could call somebody was like, oh, you're so gay, or that joke is so gay. In seventh grade, it was the time of the truly tasteless joke book, and just like insensitivity about like anything that wasn't standard. So I think when I was in 10th grade, Desert Hearts came out, and I heard that it was kind of lesbian, and so I rented it from Blockbuster, I think, or something, and then I was taking, because we didn't have digital phones, I was taking pictures with my camera of the picture on the TV screen, and then my friend who worked at a place developing film developed it for me for free, but then she was like, why are you taking all these pictures of this? And I was like, I don't know. So anyway, so that was the kind of like internalized homophobia I grew up in. And then I just, felt like I didn't know anybody who was like Asian and gay, and it was kind of shameful. I was like, oh, my great grandmother would be so disappointed in me. She migrated from Okinawa, and I was just like, oh, I can't think about that. That's like, so then I just kind of repressed it until I came out.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I can really relate to what everybody's saying. It's, pretty much the same. I also took a break from the Nikkei community because at some point, right, my experience at the time is a lot of older women would want to try to fix me up with somebody. Oh, when are you going to get married? And it's like, so you would either have to out yourself, like, well, what do you mean by married? So it just became really uncomfortable for a time. So I just backed out. But it really doesn't allow you to make contact with that cultural part of yourself that's pretty important. A lot of times, I didn't grow up. I grew up in a very small town in Illinois, and I mean really small town, 6,200 people. And there were no other Japanese, there was no other Japanese family in our town. We were it. So I didn't really ever understand a lot of the nuances in our community. So now, sometimes when I'm in our community space, I tend to be a little clumsy. You know, I can really say things that really make people angry. The whole hierarchy of respect thing, I don't always do that very well. So I have a real interesting relationship with our community. What's your relationship today to the Nikkei community? You talked a little bit about it.
I'm not that heavily connected to the Nikkei community at this point in time. I think that's just the way I like it. Although Wayne took me to
Oh, yes. I forgot.
God, I can't remember what it's called.
The Long Beach, the Long Beach Oblong.
Oh, yeah, the Long Beach Oblong. And I thought, oh, okay, so I'll go to this thing, and it'll be just, a bunch of people doing it. And I went to this thing, and I hadn't been to Obon in decades, and I friggin' loved it. I mean, I just friggin' loved it, and I realized there are parts of me floating around that I have not paid attention to. So I was really grateful to you for offering that, extending that invitation, because I got to see, oh, I just really love this. This is part of my childhood. This is part of me being part of the Nikkei community that has memories that go back and that can make memories going forward. And that there are places in the Nikkei community that aren't about, showing up in kind of a small identity, but are about just people showing up and being part of the community. And that's I think I'd always sort of projected that it wasn't that accepting, embracing.
Yeah, the Long Beach one is great too, because it is more diverse than the average Oblong.
Oh,
I mean, yeah, it's got a real interesting mix of people, because they're not in the typical Nishi, Jodo Shinshu thing. They're kind of a little off to the side, and I think it gives them a lot of freedom that a lot of other places don't have. How about you, Valerie? Your relationship with the Nikkei community these days?
Growing up, we lived in a pretty white suburban neighborhood. There was like a wave of Korean immigration when I was in about 5th grade, and but until then, like, we would see our relatives monthly at a family gathering, and so and eventually, I think when I was in 7th grade, we started going to a Japanese American church, Union Church down on 3rd Street in San Pedro. So when I was growing up, Asians were either family or people I saw at church, and so then when I started dating, it just seemed I don't want to date my family. It just was weird. And then, we would go for the summers to Hawaii where there were more Asians, and we went to Obon. But we didn't go to Japanese school. We didn't have kind of that other culture. I didn't play basketball, so I didn't have that kind of family tie. So, I don't know, it's kind of a weaker tie. And so I realized that Okairi is really important to me, even though sometimes I'm shy, what if I go there and it's not weird, but I don't have anything to talk to people about, whatever. And then I come here and it's really nice to talk to people. So, and it makes me realize I don't have enough connection with the Japanese queer community. So Chris was kind enough to say she would hook me up with a couple of listservs. But I appreciate being here because it makes me realize what I'm lacking in my kind of day-to-day. Once every 2 years is not enough, so thank you.
Yeah. Lori, your relationship to the Nikkei community?
Growing up, I didn't really meet other Asian kids, JA kids, until junior high. There were some in the neighborhood, but it was mainly a black neighborhood, Crenshaw area. Shout out to the west side. And my parents are both 4th generation Korean American and JA from Hawaii. So they grew up speaking English. They were very Americanized. Dad didn't speak Korean, although his mom was fluent mom spoke a little Japanese so she could communicate with her mom, with her mother. So I didn't, once I got to be a teenager, then I got involved with CYC basketball, and that led to, what was it called? NAU basketball. Another shout out to the Yellow Brotherhood. But I didn't grow up really in touch with my culture. Like my people were in Hawaii during the war, so we didn't come. I don't come from the camp experience. So while I understand it, and it was an atrocity, I personally don't have that background. In Hawaii, it's just different. Mainly because JAs weren't rounded up for the most part. Some were, those deemed to be danger to the state, to the country. But since I grew up without that background, and I also knew I was different in some way, I've always felt like an outsider. And I probably always will, which I'm okay with that. Yeah. I mean, I in some ways, I wish I were part of the whole, the greater whole, but I'm not. I appreciate being included, but my relationship with the Nikkei community is, I faced discrimination as a kid within the community because I wasn't full Japanese. And I used my dad's last name. And that alone was enough. I'm talking about especially the older generations. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I applied for menial box boy jobs, J-Town on Jefferson, back in the old neighborhood. And I knew it's because they read my last name on the application. They weren't going to hire me, and they didn't, just for that simple reason. Yeah. So I like being part of the community, but I don't feel of it. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah. So I'm not attuned to all the customs and traditions, and I mean I like it. I fully appreciate it, but Mom was a single mother, and so she just cooked up a big pot of stew, or fried up some burgers, and the worst times were when she fried up a pan of liver and onions. That was so, but you had to eat it, right? Or go hungry. So I'm not really in tune with my culture, either Japanese or Korean, which I regret. I really do. But am I doing anything about it? No, because I'm lazy. Yeah, shout out to P-Flag. But yeah, so I'm in touch. I have a lot of primarily JA friends, and so that's my kind of tether to the community through them and their families. Yeah, and through P-Flag, and your folks and I are neighbors now. We go to breakfast and lunch. Yeah, that's fun. Talk story. So yeah.
That's awesome. So let's zero in a little bit more specifically on what it's like to be, the LGBTQ plus 55 crowd. The youngest one of us is 55, so there are a lot of advantages, I think, of being with somebody. We all happen to be single, which I think is interesting. I got a travel brochure in the mail, and there were these different vacation packages that you could pick. There was a wild California escape. That was $3,360. The most expensive one was Wildlife of the World by private jet, and that's $107,995, and that's price per person, double occupancy, single supplement applies. I was really irritated by this single supplement applies, right? Like, the people who could least afford the single supplement, right, are the single people. You know, it just struck me as so wrong. You know, a woman at work, she was telling me, you know, my husband is not very supportive, and you know, I'm bringing up these kids literally by myself, blah blah blah. And you know, I didn't offer advice like, yeah, leave the bastard, or you know, but I just said, you know, it is easier with somebody else. You know, I'm divorced myself, and you know, going to Costco by yourself, it kind of just doesn't make sense all of a sudden, right? You don't need 15 rolls of paper towel. So economies, the economy is designed for a household of 2 people. So, you know, talk about, you know, being single and what does that mean to you? You know, Valerie, you know, we both have children. As a lesbian mom, what does being single look like to you?
It used to mean getting a baby, having my daughter go over and stay with my parents when I had a evening out or a whatever. And now that my child has a phone, sometimes I can do lunch or brunch or something. But yeah, it leads to questions like my daughter saying like, "Oh, I thought you slept over at so-and-so's house last week. Are you doing it again?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, like just, you know what, just go to grandma and grandpa's house and be quiet." So, yeah. It looks, yeah, it's like, you know, dating is impacted by childcare.
Yeah,
Your kids are 20 though.
They are. I happen to, my kid worked in food service, and so sometimes if he wasn't needed, they would send him home. And so I happen to have, had somebody over, you know, back door bangs open. It's like, it's not like you have to leave, but we have to stop doing what we're doing, and you need to leave. And so my kid sees this guy run out the front door from his bedroom, you know. So I just went into the bedroom, you know, because I just felt like you need to acknowledge what just happened. And he just started laughing. He just started just busting up, like, you know, he starts with this grin, and then the next minute he's like, you know, so like, okay. You know, I just left it there. You know, I didn't say anything. I thought, you don't need to say anything. He gets it. So, you know, Lori, being single, how is that for you?
Oh, I love it. I love it. In my life, I've had nothing but busted marriages, not marriages, relationships. One busted marriage, all with women, 2 with trans women, but I'm not good in relationships. I think I tried, and I think I was trying to live up to societal expectations. So I'm happily single, and I have a cat. I used to have 3, so my cat is like that. She's all I need. So being single as Nikkei person, LGBT, it doesn't affect me in the way I want to live, which is pretty much alone. I mean, there's benefits, of course, to having a partner, but especially now that I'm retired, I do what I want when I want. There's no more putting in a hard day's work and hearing, honey, we have to go shopping. I'm like, I don't have to go shopping. You have to go shopping. Right? What were you doing all day? Well, I was working. Yeah, okay. Well, yeah. So, yeah, I'm really happy being alone. Yeah.
Great.
Unless anyone's out there looking for a older trans woman who loves cats. But it would be platonic. Would have to be platonic.
What an offer.
How about you, Gary?
Well, I'm actually in the process of inching out of the single category. Oh, please. This is not People magazine. So that's an interesting experience for me. I think part of it is being the age that I am, being very, very, very close to retirement. He's already retired. It's long distance. He lives in the Bay Area. But I think we tried it before for about 6 years, and we've been apart for 5, and are just sort of moving forward, seeing if there's enough there to have, you know, whatever semblance of relationship there's going to be. And as we've been doing this process, I recognized that my desire to have a relationship that looked a particular way, that was clearly designed on straight people's models, was one of the contributing factors to our not being able to stay together. And so being the age that I am now, it's cool to just let that go. Like, I don't need this to go there, right? And so there's a lot less pressure. You know, there are no children involved in that kind of thing. He has a dog and 2 cats, but, you know, that's a whole other situation. But I like where it is, right? I think there was a time when I was dissatisfied with where it is because it wasn't where, you know, I wanted it to end up at. Now I understand that what's most important is that we make a, you know, reciprocal commitment to be together however that works itself out, and to let that evolve, right, without going straight to the model of. And there's a lot of freedom in that, right?
Yeah.
There's just a lot of freedom in that.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is tremendously exciting. You know, Valerie and I have children, so questions about maybe our legacy or end-of-life issues are somewhat at a default schedule. I mean, if there's anything left out of my life, you know, the kids will get that, and I've already kind of discussed what I want to have happen when I die. Often their response is, do we have to talk about this right now? It's like, well, no, but, you know, I keep bringing it up because, you know, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, and then, you know, like, just, you know, it's on my mind. But Valerie, legacy issues, end-of-life issues, you don't think about it?
Oh, no, I talk with Lauren about it. She also is like, do we have to talk about this? Okay. But it's like, do you want a place to go? Like, it's cheaper if I get my ashes scattered. No, I want a place to go and think about you. Oh, okay, like a cemetery, like a tree, like a plaque. Oh, well, she wants a plaque. So it's like, okay, it's not the cheapy, like, go get scattered among the redwoods and think of me. So, yeah, what she can have, what I have, including my cat and, you know, whatever. Yeah.
How about you, Gary?
That word kind of freaks me out.
Yeah. Well, I just look at it like I'm 2/3 done.
Oh,
you know?
we all
Yeah,
are, girl. I think when I think of my legacy, the thing that I wonder about, or I'm most concerned about, is even in the midst of all of this sort of stumbling around in this very long process of self-discovery and self-acceptance and self-celebration, has it had any impact on anybody? Like, will it remain? Because that, to me, is, I mean, apart from whatever possessions and money and all that, that's the most important thing to me, that when I think about, will there be something that remains in that, you know, in that area? Like, will people remember, will people have taken something away from something I said or something I've written or a behavior? So, and you never know. You never know what that is, right? So back in July, I retired from the Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles after 23 years.
Wow.
And which is a long stint. And we have to do a lot of work to present those concerts, and we had to memorize like 44 different songs this time out. It was a Disney show. And so I'm just trying to hold it together and keep all those lyrics in my head, right? And I had a talk spot, so I had to keep that in mind too. And we had concerts on Saturday and Sunday. And on Saturday, before we performed, we were sort of in a rehearsal state. The president of the organization decides to announce that there were 6 of us who had been in the chorus over 20 years and were planning to leave. And I had not planned to tell anybody that until after the shows were done. So we're getting ready, but people are coming up to me and they're like, "Oh, you can't leave now again," and they're crying, and I'm like, "Don't do this. I have lyrics to 44 songs I have to keep in my head and a talk spot. Don't screw me up now." But the ones that surprised me the most were, there were 4 younger Asian Americans in the chorus. And they said basically the same thing, and it shocked me. They came up to me individually and they said some form of, "We watch you. We watch how you carry yourself. We watch how you interact in this predominantly white organization. We watch the decisions you make. We watch how you move through this thing, and you have been a role model." And it shocked the heck out of me. It's like, "Oh my God, you've been watching? Why are you watching? Like, what you be looking at, right?" And it shocked me, right? Like, I was really surprised by it. Like, but I recognized too that when I joined the chorus, there were no Asian American role models. Just like when I came out, there were very few Asian American role models. Just like the impetus for Okaidi Speaks was, I leaned over to Marsha one day and said, "We have got to get the stories of any Nikkei out, LGBTQ people on video now, because and we couldn't find any, right? They were not there. We had no role models. Nobody left us those legacies, right? And to me, that's like, oh. And then she looked at me and goes, "So I guess it has to be you Sansei pioneers." I'm like, "Don't give me that Marsha thing," right? But of course, who can say no to her, right? But I guess that's what I think about, right? Is there something, even this, does this leave something that will impact somebody? That makes it worth it, right? All the bouncing around and the rough and tumble and the non-straight lines of personal evolution to personal celebration, even though this looks confusing and nonsensical, if it impacts anybody, like, especially if it impacts somebody in their 20s or 30s. That's what I think of in terms of legacy. Yeah.
Thank you. Lori, legacy?
Legacy? I never really thought about it. A few years ago, or more than a few years ago, I was talking with my mom. And Mom was a very loving, compassionate, really strong woman. But she kept it real. Mom could be hard. She didn't fool around. And so we were just talking, and I said, Mom, what do you think happens when we die? So she hit her cigarette. She might have even had her shades on inside her house. Put the smoke down, picked up her glass of wine. She looked at me and she said, nothing. I was like, what? Oh my God. And she was never religious. Her mom was Buddhist, her dad was Buddhist. But I said, I was stunned. I said, because who says that? Oh, nothing. I said, for real, nothing? She said, oh yeah. I said, no soul, no spark, no essence of life. You know, we don't go to this wherever place. She said, no. I said, you mean just blackness, like you never existed? She said, yeah. So that gave me a whole different perspective on death, which, you know, I'm in relatively good health right now, so it's easy for me to say I'm not afraid of death. But I think one probably doesn't know the truth of that until that moment comes. So I don't think I'm afraid of death. And much like Gary, as far as legacy goes, if anything that I've said, done, didn't mean, if I had some kind of impact, good or bad, on somebody, then that'll be my legacy, and I'm okay with that. Yeah, I just started a writer's class, and I like to read, but I've never written. So I'm going to try to use this class to get the basics of telling my story in the hope that it might help someone in and out of the LGBT community, in and out of the Nikkei thing. Just as I guess that might be considered a legacy.
Yep, definitely.
Something to leave behind. For myself, I like to think I don't have that much. I like to think that I have my ego fairly well in check. So I don't feel the need to leave anything that is my mark, you know, thing that I did and will be remembered for. So I don't think of legacy much, except that if I've touched someone in any way, hopefully positive, that'll be it.
Great, thank you.
You're forever my sister, Lori.
Thank you, baby. Thank you, little one.
You know, sex, I wanted to talk about sex a little bit. You know, I went to my first sex party when I was 58. It was in a warehouse out by LAX, and I was given a paper bag in which to put my clothes. And I can assure you that I was the only man there that was Asian and 58, but it was incredibly liberating. Not just literally, but, you know, I let go of a lot of shame that day and so many negative associations I had with sex, right? Words like slutty, sleazy, promiscuous, you know. I also learned that subsequently that they still, if you get an STD, sometimes they give you a shot in the rear end. And I didn't think that they still did that. I thought that there was some pill you could take or some sort of thing that they would press into your skin. I was just floored by that. And it's like, I wonder if they do this on purpose. I wonder if there's a different way of treating this, but they don't do it. You know, so, you know, while I prefer certainly hooking up with men my own age, you know, I've accepted this label, this occasional label I get as daddy, because it sometimes you just
Occasional.
yeah. Well, you know, like when you're hooking up with men your own age, they don't call you daddy, you know. But you know, accepting this moniker allows you to occasionally hook up with, some really amazing younger dudes. They're a bit dim, but it's just for that couple of hours. So, sex to me is still pretty important, and I want to keep getting it as long as I can. How about you? How do you feel about sex?
Wait a minute. Did you finish that whole thing?
The idea was to make us more comfortable
I
talking
see.
about sex. If I was somewhat confessional about my own.
Somewhat. I think that my ideas about sex have evolved. So that any activity that I'm involved in is more or not, is as much about connection. Actually, it's more about connection. And so the kinds of touch that are involved are not about trying to get to a particular place, as to try, as much as trying to create a safe space to communicate through the language of touch a connection. And without the connection, I'm just sort of like, ooh, I'm over this. I don't, and so it bores me, frankly. And so I don't, it does. If I don't do, I just don't. I'm not interested in sex without connection or any kind of sensual activity or whatever. It just doesn't interest me. It's, to me, I'm like, why bother? I'd rather go home and watch the Great British Baking Show. And go to
That's great.
and I often do. But it's interesting because, last weekend was Palm Springs Pride, and the week before that was Palm Springs Other Pride. And I found, a definite shift in the events that I went to and the events that I did not go to. And the events that I went to, especially this year, were all about connecting, meeting up with friends, hanging out together, and strengthening those kinds of bonds, right? And what I came to understand about that as I thought about it, as I reflected back on it, when I would go to events that are more perhaps sexually oriented or perhaps more hookup oriented, I never felt like I could be myself. I felt like I had to be a version of me that was maybe going to attract somebody or be attractive to somebody or conform to somebody else's idea of what they were was attractive. But I never felt like I could be myself, right? And the last 2 weekends, I made a discovery that I went to a cigar social 2 weekends ago, and it was mostly older gay men, like 60s and 70s. And because there was not the hookup aspect in the gathering, I had a really good time. Talking and eating, and I thought, what have I been doing all this time, right? And so the last 2 weekends were really fun in just discovering what are the events that facilitate that kind of connection as opposed to, or emphasizing the more hookup aspects of things. And I had a much better time because I didn't feel the pressure of having to measure up or be something or produce something. I could just show up and be myself. And I thought, So that contextualizes sex for me in a different way than it used to, right?
Yeah.
So that's where that is. Yeah.
Valerie, sex still
Me?
important to you?
Yeah, it would be nice. You know, it's just, for me, it requires a level of personal connection. I just haven't found that recently. So, yeah, but I enjoy going to, like, I don't know, with the pandemic, like going to, you know, there weren't a lot of in-person events, so just like Zoom events and just getting to know people without this, like, that we were going to meet each other really soon and like even hang out or talk or have coffee or whatever. So I really like not feeling that pressure, like, of speed dating. Like, let's get to know each other and see if we like each other as human beings and want to spend time with each other and then whatever. But it feels better not to feel like I need to be on or be a certain person that, like, somebody will check yes on the I want to connect with them after the speed dating event, or it's like, I'm tired of that. I have very little patience. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, Lori, earlier you mentioned, you know, relationships and, you know, they'd have to be platonic. So sex to you, not important?
No, it has zero importance. Because when I started female hormones, it's called HRT, hormone replacement therapy. And I researched it a lot. I'm in the Kaiser program for trans people, which is great. And they made sure that I understood that as this treatment went on, which if I choose will be for the rest of my life, because my male body just doesn't produce estrogen on its own. So I have to get it injected or pills or however it gets into my body. So they said one of perhaps the main thing is that you will gradually no longer to be functional as a male. You won't, you know, nothing will happen down there. And they were right. And I didn't mind at all because years before that, I had testicular cancer. And so they had to take one of the little guys away. And I thought it so ironic that these organs that I never wanted, never asked for, could possibly kill me. I'm like, you little bastard. Take the other one too. So what that taught me through that experience was my testosterone count, which was already low, got even lower by half because they removed one. And that's when I started thinking, a lot of folks better hope I never rule the world, because boy children right off the bat gonna lose one. Think of the economic and societal value. The court system would be nowhere near as overwhelmed. Penal system, because it made me calm down, and I was like, sex? Nah. And it just, like today, I'm like, I don't even think about it. And even if I did, I couldn't do anything about it. So that's the effects of estrogen. So no, it's of zero importance to me. I love going on Pinterest and killing time, and I just love the way women look. Just they're like natural works of art. Because I'm still attracted to women. I mean, I present as male because I started hormones so late in life. And I asked the doctor, hey, what's taking so long? He said, well, you started so late. And in short, we're not miracle workers. You know, you get what you get whenever you get it. And so my mom was small-chested, so I am too. Thanks, Mom. Yeah, but sex to me is like, it's got me into a lot of trouble when I was younger. It ruined me financially for a long time. And but you know, when you're young, you do a lot of stupid things. But So I don't think I do stupid things like that anymore.
You know.
Yeah, sex, nah, I don't. I hear what Gary was saying. It's like once I was freed of the desire and that urge, you know, the pressure to you know, be a man, and you know, it just freed me up to kind of like just leave that behind and move on to whatever's the next phase. Yeah.
So thank you. I'm sorry, Mia. Mia's probably like, it was over at 3:30. So
Girl, she's
thank
not like you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
It's been really nice.
Thanks.